and he's in trouble. He's going to run. He's going to get the first down.
Don't sleep on those legs. Oh, he faked the slide. Sauce time. The Pitt Panthers have pulled a stunning upset over the West Virginia Mountaineers.
And Johnny Majors gets a ride across the field.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Simplify. As always, I'm your host, Zach Kaminsky. This week, joining me is just Mason. Can't make it, but how are we doing, Mason?
Doing well, man. A lot of big stuff going on in college football, so we're ready to have a good show.
I mean, it was kind of ironic, right? We ended the last show saying, we're going to either talk about the Big Ten or the SEC next week. We are talking about the Big Ten, but we are not previewing the conference. That's going to have to wait.
Yeah, they just couldn't go without being in the news for one more week, so they had to go ahead and make the headlines for us to talk about them anyway. But timed out nicely. I
think they just were listening to the pod, and they realized that they couldn't let this go without the next pod dropping. So
yeah, they got to have it. Listen, we're going to talk about it a lot. You got to follow the money. They needed that Simplify money this week.
Yeah, they did. So if you haven't heard, the Big Ten went Sicko Mode, and USC and UCLA are expected to, well, not expected to, they are joining the conference in the 2024 season. For a frame of reference, that is, I guess that's 2 seasons away, right? Just 2?
Yeah, technically, yeah.
All right. That is when the Pac-12's media rights deal was up, so they can leave the conference without any penalty, monetary, or anything like that. And this has, first let's just talk about the 2 California schools going there. Everyone had their jokes on the first day about, obviously the conference isn't regional anymore with UCLA and USC coming in. Everyone made the jokes about them playing a 9 a.m. local time game in the Minnesota snowstorm, but you get the 2 biggest brands in the Pac-12, right? You can argue that Oregon's the second biggest, but 2 of the top 3 pretty much, right?
Yeah, no, that was exactly going to be my point, is that it's the 2. When you think of the Pac-12, you think of those 2 schools. Like USC is probably far and away one. And then you get a really good one in UCLA too. So it's a really interesting kind of dynamic of those brands joining some of the best other brands in the country, just on a completely different area.
Right. It's so it's obviously not, there isn't a lot of connection there, especially with some of the more Midwestern teams in the Big Ten, but you can argue that like teams like USC, UCLA have some connection to the Big Ten through the Rose Bowl. Because that's a Pac-12 Big Ten game every year.
Yeah, there have been some great games there. There's definitely history. The precedent's there. So now that this has become such with NIL, and even before that, it was just, even though it's college kids, like it was professional league, adding that in there is going to be a cool little shake up to the history of the game, so to say.
Yeah, I wouldn't, this isn't even really an NIL thing. This is squarely a TV deal thing, because already before the Big Ten got these 2 teams, they were set to pretty much double their current revenue from about $50 million a year to, I'm not sure if that's per school or for the whole league, but I'm pretty sure that's per school, to 100. And then you're bringing in 2 of the biggest brands in LA. It's not like that media markets matter anymore. Like, it's not like their leagues are clamoring over Rutgers, but it's still a big market, even if it's turning towards like streaming and things like that.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I just find it funny that like it definitely makes sense from a dollars and cents perspective, but from like a fan base perspective, like I just think the concept of a USC or UCLA going into like Madison, Wisconsin, and to like get on audiences there, and you get like this Big Ten dad whose kid, like for say USC is better than whatever Big Ten they root for, having his son like USC and him just being furious on the inside will be
yeah, I can see that happening. Like whenever the Yankees come to town and like some dad of like a small market team has to watch their son put on a Yankees cap and like a Derek Jeter jersey. And on the inside, he's just dying.
Yeah, he wants them to be a hometowner, and they're selling out when they're like 5. We've all been there, I think, but
yeah. I don't know. I guess from a football perspective, it definitely makes sense. I mean, USC is obviously down. UCLA is more or less kind of floor of a good to decent team. And then you're obviously betting on UCLA getting back to what it was. But I mean, even so, they were betting on this a long time ago. Like this was in the works for almost a year, which is, it's probably a direct response to Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC. Well, it definitely is a direct response.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting there is the Lincoln Riley hire. I wonder how much influence that had on him making that switch. Like, were they in his ear a little bit? Like, hey, I know you're kind of ducking the SEC right now, but how about you can shut the haters up? We'll go to the Big Ten in 3 years when you're still here.
I wonder if he still would have gone if they weren't already in the works to bring themselves into the Big Ten.
Yeah, like obviously it's a great position to be in either way from like a recruiting perspective, money perspective, all of that. But only sweetens the deal to know that you're going to, be playing those teams up in the Midwest.
It's almost like whatchamacallit? It's almost like you have a trial run of your team for a couple years in the Pac-12, and then you just get to put out like the finished product in year 3 in the Big Ten.
Yeah, they get their tune-up games for 2 years, basically.
They get 2 years of tune-up games before they get to play big.
That is a good way to look at it, because,
I guess like if you're looking at through the lens like playoff expansion, like say it goes to 12 teams, you're gonna get probably 4 teams from the Big Ten and SEC at this point, and so just like Texas and Oklahoma trying to find that like 3rd or 4th seed behind Bama or Georgia, you're trying to find that 3rd or 4th seed behind like Ohio State and Michigan.
Yeah, I feel like we're just moving closer and closer to it's just going to be like 2 conferences. Because I guess what's the plan here? I saw an article that maybe the Big 12 is going to look to absorb some of the Pac-12 teams too now, because obviously they're going to take a pretty big hit. So that it's going to be interesting to see what happens there with their plan.
Right. So this is actually what I wanted to get into next. So I don't want to be too early, right? Because I mean, honestly, I thought the Big 12 was dead after Texas and OU left, but they did the smart thing and they brought in some, fairly regional teams that kind of fit within the blueprint. I mean, it will actually fit even more now that we'll get to that. But I thought they were going to die, but I don't see the Pac-12 rebounding from this, right? Because word is that, well, let's start at what the Big Ten really wants, and that's Notre Dame.
Yeah.
So Notre Dame is currently in a deal with the ACC where they have to play all their non-revenue sports, baseball, soccer, etc., in the ACC, and in return, they have to play that weird 5-game schedule that's not a conference schedule, so they can stay independent. And if they want to join a conference, it has to be the ACC according to this this agreement, right? Yeah. But they can buy themselves out for, I believe, the high price is about $150 million, low price about $100,000. At this point, they're not going to join the ACC. Like the money difference between those two leagues is going to be too great.
Yeah, no shot there in the ACC. They're because they have like that history with USC and UCLA a little bit too. And they fit right in with the Big 12. And now with all that extra money they have going into the market, they're for sure going to join the Big 12.
Big 10, you mean?
Yes, Big 10.
Well, not to mention the 2 California schools, but also Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State. Like this is a Midwestern school. I mean, even more so, it's not going to join the SEC because it wants to be seen as this like East Coast school too. Like you would think that if you went into a bar in New York City that Notre Dame was like somewhere in the Bronx. Everybody in New York City loves Notre Dame.
Yeah. Probably because the state of New York just doesn't have any good college football team except for like Buffalo. But like, yeah, they found their niche there, and it works.
Mm-hmm. So I think that this move was almost like a sort of like bad signal to Notre Dame, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think it's almost inevitable that eventually they're going to join the Big Ten for money and because they're going to have most of their rivals in the Big Ten at that point. Now, that'll bring the conference to 17 teams. Yeah, 17. They're going to want to even it out. And reporting has said that Oregon and Washington have both reached out to the Big Ten, but the Big Ten is currently waiting on what Notre Dame says. So what that says to me is that the Big Ten is looking to pry Notre Dame from the ACC because even if they pay that, even the max money of that buyout of the non-revenue sports is $150K, that pays for itself in 2 years of Big Ten football.
Yeah, I mean, and for Notre Dame, that's nothing. It's, I mean, I hate to say it, but I feel like it's more of a when, not an if thing at this point. Like, yeah. I don't know. You think I think probably in the next 5 years or so, they're going to get kind of strong armed into joining.
I would take the under on 5.
Yeah.
So either way, so it looks like they want Notre Dame in. Then that looks like it'll bring USC, or sorry, not USC. Oregon and Washington to the fold, brings it to 19 teams. Now that 20th team, because they're gonna want to probably have it even. I have an idea of who they might pick. Who do you think they would go for first?
I feel like since they're bringing in so many other regional teams, they, I don't know, might try to stay in the area. Will they bring a Cincinnati in?
No, that's actually not what I was thinking, because they have the Big 12 rights coming up, and we'll get to the Big 12 in a second, because that league could actually really, really, like, what's the word? Not profit, but really take advantage of the Pac-12 falling apart. I think they go for another West Coast school, and I think it's Stanford.
Okay. Ooh, yeah, I mean, that fits. That definitely fits. And I feel like that would be, you go down the list, and that's kind of is like the third or fourth, arguably brands or program that's out there. So that would probably fit in there. More
than that, too. It's also they're an AAU university, which, if you don't know, is the top 63 research universities in the United States. I believe 2 of them are in Canada. But essentially, it's just an unlimited pool of research money. And one of the unwritten rules for Big Ten admission is for your university to be a part of the AAU, so you can put all your money into this Big Ten slush fund so that schools can more easily get grants, or you can like partner together to get bigger grants for projects. USC and UCLA obviously fit that. Both Oregon, Washington, and Stanford do. Not to forget that Stanford is one of Notre Dame's yearly rivals as well.
Yeah. I think I mentioned on a pod before where for some reason I always remember them having good games, even though it hasn't been close within the last year or two. There have been plenty of good games throughout history that they have it there.
Right. So I mean that even sweetens the pot a little bit more for them. So
yeah.
So I guess I think at least for the Big Ten, their moves stop here, and like they'll probably go to 20 if they bring in Notre Dame, because they'll bring in those other 3 from the Pac-12 is what I would expect.
Yeah, I think that checks out. It'll be interesting to see what happens when Notre Dame does inevitably end up joining there, and like more specifically what that means kind of for the ACC, because what I think is probably going to happen, and if I'm switching gears on you too much, let me know, but Notre Dame probably joins the Big Ten, and then at that point you're looking at possibly like Clemson and Miami moving down to the SEC as well, like there have been some rumors about, which then the ACC kind of moves in with the Pac-12 and being a little bit fucked, to be honest.
So I want to loop back to the ACC later.
Okay.
But I want to touch on the rest of the Pac-12, right? Because So that leaves. So in this hypothetical, you have USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, Stanford leaving. That's 5 out of 12 teams. The other 4 AAU schools are the Arizonas, Colorado, and Utah, which, as you mentioned earlier, are rumored to be in talks with the Big 12.
Yeah.
I think they're going to jump ship. Especially if Oregon and Washington leave, they're out, right?
Yeah, probably. I mean, who joins that conference if Oregon, Stanford, Utah are out of there? Like who picks slack in that conference? So you can't.
I mean, your only options are to bring up like Boise State,
like San Diego State,
San Jose State, Fresno State. I don't think like a team like Cal wants to sell themselves as being on equal footing as Fresno State.
Yeah.
So I think. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say those are going to be the schools that get screwed over.
Yeah, because I think that at least for like Utah, Colorado, and the Arizonas feel like not natural, but they fit in with the Big 12, right? Like Colorado was in its predecessor, the Big 8. Utah has been all over the place, but it fits, especially with like a package deal with Colorado, as well as to bring in with BYU. And the Arizonas, it'll work, right? They're party schools. Yeah, it's Big 12.
Yeah.
So
they definitely fit.
But that leaves Cal, Oregon State, and Wazoo. Those teams are fucked.
Yeah.
They have to go to the Mountain West, right?
I would think, unless just for branding purposes, the Pac-12's like, hey, Mountain West, you want to just be our conference now instead? Like, but it's going to be pretty much the entire Mountain West plus just Cal and Oregon State and Wazoo. Like, we just kind of ran out of room for 3 teams.
But maybe Cal goes independent because they have a fuck ton of money and they feel like, they're kind of uppity. But like, no Power 5 conference is going to take the Oregon State and Wazoo. Like, they're in the middle of nowhere. They don't add like value, and they're not going to be some sort of package deal with Oregon and Washington to the Big 10 because they don't add enough value as far as TV revenue.
Now, what I didn't look into, are like USC, UCLA joining the Big 10 for just football, or is it all athletics?
All athletics.
Wow. Yeah. So that's even bigger when you think about basketball and stuff too.
Even Olympic sports, especially because the only conference comparable to the Pac-12 in like schools that carry that many sports is the Big 10.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't think that like those teams are going to go to the SEC, because the SEC famously does not carry, like those schools carry maybe like 10 varsity sports at most.
Yeah, their football through and through, like they've had a little bit of resurgence in basketball and stuff, but like that their wins and losses come on Saturdays, not in November and December.
Yeah,
well,
I mean,
for basketball, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, their schools care about basketball, their schools care about baseball, but they all care about football. That's
that's one common denominator there, and it's college football.
Yeah. So now let's circle back to the ACC. Now, I think the ACC is a really unique case here because their current grant of rights, like the Pac-12s, are up in 2024. So, the UCLA and USC were able to just say, well, we can wait 2 years and then leave for free. ACC runs through 2036, I want to say. Let me Google that. Yeah, so it's 2036. So if you were to try and buy out these schools and bring them to your conference, it would be a massive buyout. Like, it would take years for that to even itself out in the ledgers.
Yeah, I don't know. That feels like it's And I guess it's just the way it timed out, but it feels like it's way longer. You see like all these other teams making moves and stuff. I feel left out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's almost like the way I see it, there is a ticking clock on the ACC. It's just set to a little bit longer of a time than the Pac-12.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier that like it's rumored that Miami, FSU, Clemson, and the other one was UNC, right?
Right.
They're rumored to the SEC, which, you know, for the first three makes sense. UNC, we'll see if they leave the ACC for basketball. Because, like, UNC is ACC basketball. Like, them and Duke, they are the conference.
Yeah.
So, I really wonder if they'll break that up. You know,
The other three make perfect sense. You know, Clemson's going to be the first one to jump at that, probably.
oh, absolutely.
But like with the way Miami's going right now, too, Florida State's kind of, I feel like a USC where they've been so good in the past that like they have a little bit of that brand and that history that'll play in the SEC.
They've got an SEC fan base. They got the dedicated fan base in a football state.
Yep, exactly. But yeah, then that essentially, like, if you see those teams like, say North Carolina stays, those three teams go, even if Florida State stays, really interesting dynamic for Pitt then, because you're looking at, you know, you go from somebody who's in the mix at the top for a while to potentially being like a conference powerhouse, but it's the ACC, the new ACC. So I don't know how I would feel about that or what our strategy would be there.
I think there's like pretty much three paths that you're looking at. So the ACC schools that fit the AAU requirements for the Big Ten are Pitt, UNC, and Virginia. Now Virginia is going to be a package deal with VTech, so that's an interesting thing to consider. Pitt, I don't know this for a fact, but I would pretty confidently say that Penn State would try and block Pitt getting into the Big Ten, just like Michigan tried to block Michigan State.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I think the first option is to just try and be the top dog in this new ACC, and realistically, that's probably you, NC State, and maybe Wake Forest. They still got it running. Maybe Virginia Tech if that ends up working out. And maybe that's like an audition for like the Big Ten for like these teams, or maybe you look at the Big 12 and you try and join up with Cincinnati and West Virginia, and maybe you try and take like Virginia Tech and NC State with you.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate that. I don't know what I saw. We put a poll out today. Do you have the numbers for that? What are people saying about what they want to see, or what did you put options for that?
Yeah, so let me pull it up real quick. So this is in response to a quote given from an ACC school, which is, quote, "We'll figure it out," was the quote given from an ACC school in relation to the grant of rights. So the feeling is that these schools might jump at the Big Ten or SEC and just worry about the cost later. So, it's my thought that, like, schools like Pitt, VT, NC State, Wake Forest, these schools that are investing in football currently would have good reason to try and take them to court and even try and get the money or even try and keep the conference together. But after that, I asked, would you rather see Pitt in the Big Ten, SEC, or the top of the new ACC, which in this case would be Sans, Clemson, FSU, UNC, and Miami? The Big Ten won with about 64% of the vote. The top of the new ACC got about 32%, and then the SEC got 4%. So it's probably one vote, I want to say.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm with the public on that one. I think it would be the best fit. Like some of those schools coming over from the West Coast, we have a little bit of history with at least Penn State. And I feel like some of those other schools in there too. And it just makes sense from I know I keep saying it makes sense from a geography perspective, which apparently doesn't fucking matter at all anymore. But
Yeah.
there is like a little bit of that in it, I think, that could help us.
Yeah, you've got Rutgers as well. I mean, you'd probably like to see. So, if you stay in the new ACC, I think the obvious thing they'd have to do is bring up some G5 schools similar to the Big 12, like maybe App State, Coastal Carolina.
I could see Temple, maybe like a Temple joining the ACC or something like
Temple
that.
fucking sucks. I mean, geography doesn't matter anymore. Go get yourself fucking Louisiana Lafayette.
Yeah. Tulsa.
Tulsa.
I don't know. I'm trying to think. Like all the American schools are, I feel like, going to go to the worth going are going to the Big 12. There's really no one in the Northeast. Like I don't know where we go.
You're not going to get Army either because they're not going to join a conference.
Yeah.
Maybe it's miserable in the AAC.
I mean, Coastal Carolina would definitely be a good one.
You could,
But-
fuck it, just try and bring Boise in. Scoop up UTSA, Northern Illinois, just, I mean, at that point, you're getting desperate. And I think if they're looking at, like, adding any teams beyond, like, App State, Coastal Carolina, Georgia State, and, like, Marshall, say, right? So that's 4 in the relative footprint of the ACC. I think you got to look at, like, a Big 12 jump with, like, Vatech, NC State, and, like, Wake or something.
Yeah. Because the Big 12 is going to have a year or two to absorb some of those teams from the West, it'll probably be easier to make a jump than to try to make it worth bringing these these group of 5 teams in to the ACC and like making it worth our while. Like ACC's probably on the downswing. I would like a jump either to probably the Big 12 or the Big 10 over the SEC if we have to.
Right. I don't think I'd like to be in the SEC either. And I think that if the ACC got to the point where it's adding these smaller teams, like I enjoy these teams. I think they're great teams, but in terms of revenue money, they aren't doing a lot. They play in smaller stadiums and they have smaller alumni bases. So I think that if it gets to that point, if you want to keep football and like these sports as a focus, you have to jump to one of these 3 super conferences. And I think that possibly the Big 12 would be more open. Like, I think that if those 4 teams were to leave for the SEC, I think teams that are in a good position for one of the other 2 conferences are probably Vatech, Pitt, Wake Forest, NC State, and Louisville probably.
Yeah.
But that leaves, I mean, Boston College is left hanging. Syracuse is going to play in the MAC.
Oh, that's awesome. That's going to be, I mean, not for them, but Syracuse as a MAC school is very funny.
Yeah. I mean, Duke and Georgia Tech just have enough money to go independent, but they're going to be lost in the wind, and Virginia is going to be kind of, sailing the open seas, because unless they get packaged with Vatech, their football isn't enough to just bring on their basketball prowess.
Right. All right. But yeah, it's gonna be a very interesting the next couple of years to see how this shakes out and what it means for not just Pitt but the entire ACC.
Yeah, I think one last thing is that we're not going to see any changes with the ACC. I'm going to say this, I'm going to have to fucking eat a hat later, but I don't think we're going to see any changes to the ACC, at least until the buyout of the grant of rights goes down. So maybe late 2020s.
Yeah. Yeah. And hell, maybe we can, maybe a couple of those teams that join the Big 12 will want to look to kind of pivot again and join the ACC, and then maybe it will be still kind of the top of it can be, instead of having like 3 main conferences with the Big 10, the Big 12, and the SEC, it'll be like a 4 conference kind of league.
Yeah, that is interesting. I do wonder, especially if the Big 12 goes more or less coast to coast with Arizona and West Virginia, it could be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
This all gets thrown on its head if the SEC decides it wants to buy out the big name programs in this league, though. So
right. All right. So we'll see. But another thing that we haven't really touched on is I feel like this is also going to have some crazy college football expansion implications as well. Because now you kind of get, with the condensing of conferences, you kind of get to the point now where, like in the SEC, you have Georgia and Alabama, who are both probably playoff teams and can both make it. But there are probably going to be some years here now, too, where you see, 3, maybe even 4, like playoff caliber teams in the same conference. And to see like how the committee can justify putting, obviously not all 4 of them, but they're going to have the conversation about, expanding because of that is my thought process.
I think, I think that, well, the playoff contract ends in, I believe, either 25 or 26. So I think
that's like right around the time that all this is going down anyway. So that,
right. So that's or it's probably 25 because that's when Oklahoma and Texas are going to the SEC. I think this is all being done in mind with the idea that in the end they're getting playoff expansion, and then they can get 3 to 4 of these teams into the playoff every year.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I feel like people have been calling for that for so long. It was probably inevitable anyway, but this model definitely like needs to operate a little bit more under that. I would think anyway.
I mean, they're definitely going to expand the playoff. I mean, it's loads more money for every conference, but you have to think the ACC and Pac-12 the commissioners want to fucking kill themselves because they vetoed the expansion and then they got cannibalized.
Yeah. Yeah, real tough look there.
I mean, at the time, it was like we want to figure out other things before we expand the playoff, and then they just got stabbed in the back. I mean, they didn't really get stabbed in the back, but they got outmaneuvered for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a better way to put it.
Like, if the ACC and Pac-12 are serious, once the OU and Texas news broke, they should have been trying to get other teams to defect from the Big 12.
Yeah.
Coulda, woulda, coulda, huh?
Yeah, retrospect's 2020.
It's hindsight, not retrospect.
Oh, yeah. Well, same shit. It's a college football podcast, not an anecdote podcast. Or whatever that is saying. Whatever that saying is.
Definitely not an anecdote. Anecdote's a story. You're 0 for 2 right now, Mason.
Sure is. Like I said, Manalytics, not analytics.
There we go. That'll play. You know what? Speaking of going 0-2, let's talk gambling. Do you want to start with going over win totals or week 1 spreads?
Let's talk some game totals first. Do you have any that stuck out to you first off? Or how about this? How about we talk about Pitt's first thing first at 8.5? They're set at.
Is it 8.5 now? Wow.
That's what I see here, which sounds like free fucking money.
Let's see. Win total. Sorry, I was looking at the spread. Yeah, 8.5. I don't bet on Pitt because only bad things happen when I do.
Yeah,
but I would take the over because I make it a rule to not bet on my own teams, but I feel like 8.5 feels a little low, right? Because
yeah, I'm with you. I have enough invested emotionally that I don't need my finances to be affected by this team. So I probably won't take that. But we'll see. I get a couple beers in me, get the FanDuel open a little bit, start throwing a parlay together. I don't know. I can't say no for certain. But definitely we have at least 9 wins in us.
I'm looking at the schedule now. I think worst case is 8-4. You lose to Tennessee, you lose to Louisville, UNC, and Miami, Florida. But I don't think that's on, like, if this is a bell curve, right? That's at the bottom end. I think sort of your middle distribution is somewhere of 9 to 10 wins.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like get through that juggernaut of the first 2 weeks, and then after that, just avoid any real trap games, which I'm kind of building one in. We'll probably have one in there somewhere, but there's a lot of winnable games down the stretch, which feels great.
I think your trap game is at Virginia, November 12th.
I can see that.
Because, like, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech aren't going to be that great. Hopefully, realistically, you want to be going into the Louisville game no worse than 5-1. You're lost to Tennessee. Hopefully, in a perfect world, it's 6-0 and you beat Tennessee for the second year in a row. You have to get through 2 tough road games. I think UNC is going to have a down year after Sam Howell leaves. And then you just got to get to Miami in the last week of the season.
Yeah.
We'll talk about this when we go into the actual Pitt season preview.
Yeah, correct. But don't run to your bookie for over 8.5 wins for Pitt this year.
I do like over 8.5.
Yeah. Another one that maybe we could talk about, we have Clemson at 10.5. It's an interest. I'm very on the fence about it, but that's another one that I think I would take the over on. And reason I bring that up is because I feel like you might have the flip side of that, because I know you're big on NC State winning that side of the conference this year.
I'm looking at their schedule. The 2 games that essentially you have to have Clemson split Wake Forest and NC State, because there isn't a loss on this schedule. Unless Notre Dame is truly a great team in Marcus Freeman's first year, it's those 2 games. I don't know. I think I badly waffle between them going 11-1 or 10-2. So that is a really well placed line. If I had to gun to my head, go ahead.
I was just saying Vegas just did their job. They set that line pretty well.
Yeah. Gun to my head, I'm gonna say under, because I think that Wake and NC State are gonna be.
Yeah, I think they probably split those, and then they're obviously not going to lose another game in the ACC. So I think that they'll manage to get to 11 there.
Speaking of Wake Forest, 8.5. How do you feel about that?
Ooh, that feels like...
It feels low, right?
It does feel low. As someone who we obviously came off playing just in the ACC championship last year, that definitely feels like it should be higher. What are their non-conf games?
Here, let me walk through their schedule. I want you to find me 4 losses here.
All right.
Week 1, VMI. Week 2, Vanderbilt. Week 3, Liberty. Week 4, Clemson. Week 5 is Florida State. Week 6 is Army. Week 7, seventh game is BC. Then you go Louisville, NC State. That weird out of conference UNC game they have going. Syracuse and Duke.
So Clemson, NC State are the obvious, trouble games. Probably lose to Clemson. I don't think that NC State is necessarily even for sure loss, but we'll chalk that up as one. And then I don't know, I guess I can't find 2 other losses on there.
I can only really say if you're high on Louisville, maybe them.
Yeah.
I think that Wake Forest is being undervalued here for sure.
Yeah, that's another good one in the ACC there that I think wouldn't be an awful one to sprinkle some on. if you like them there.
Trying to find NC State here. Do you see it listed on here? I can't fucking find it.
No, because it goes from North Carolina right to Northern Illinois. Jeez.
Jesus.
Oh, it's 8.5. They're at 8.5 as well.
Who are they at? I think they play Mississippi State now at conference. Oh no, they don't. No, they have a piss easy at a conference. It's Eastern Carolina, Charleston Southern, Texas Tech, and UConn. There's no way they lose 4 games in the ACC.
Well, I bet what Vegas is assuming is that the ACC is just the bottom part of that ACC. Well, that's not even the bottom part, but like
the middle will eat itself.
Yes, yeah, like kind of like the NFC East. Just like nobody's really good enough to to be the team that like pulls away. So they all just kind of shoot themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
Which I could see. I think there is definitely some better teams in the ACC this year, but I've been wrong before plenty of times.
That's true. Okay. I think this one's pretty undervalued as well. Baylor 7.5.
Yeah, because you're big on Baylor, right? I was one of those that did not have them in my conference championship game, but I do think that what'd you say it was at?
7.5.
I do think they'll win more games than that for sure.
Depending on minimum 8 and 4.
Yeah.
So, I guess you're looking at worst case. You have losing to BYU, the Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, and one of like Kansas State or Texas. I think. But even so, I don't see them going 7-5. That just feels wrong.
Yeah. With the year they had last year, I think that again, maybe it's just because we love betting overs, but I feel like a lot of these look a little bit low.
Yeah.
Some of these unders are going to have to hit. I just can't find one. So maybe that's the challenge: is we have to find a team that's going to go under their win total.
Duke 3.5.
Yeah.
I don't see a win in conference play other than Georgia Tech. Oh, maybe they get to 4, but they'd have to win a conference game. Because their out of conference is Temple, Northwestern, NC A&T, and Kansas. That's a tough one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me see.
Virginia Tech sitting at 5.5 is interesting. I mean, I know they're not exactly supposed to be the team to beat this year, but just feels low for Tech.
Year 1 coach. I mean,
yeah, that's what it comes down to.
Let's see. 1, 2, 3. I can get you to 6. I can get you to 6, maybe even 7 here.
For Virginia Tech?
I wouldn't touch them, though, with a year 1 coach.
Yeah, you never know. They could win 2 games.
Right. Like, if I can maybe get them. Actually, you know what? I'm thinking of, like, their previous coach and, like, the roster that had a ton of people leave. I would go under 5.5 there. Here's one. I have an interesting proposition to you.
Okay.
I think Florida at 7.5 is too high.
Run me through their schedule.
Utah week 1, loss. Kentucky week 2. I'm going to go with loss. Kentucky's been the better program for the last couple years. South Florida win. Tennessee, I'm going to go with a loss. So they're sitting at 1-3 week 4. Eastern Washington, I'll say is a win.
Yeah.
Missouri's a win. That's 3-3. I'll say they beat LSU, moving to 4-3. Then they lose Georgia A&M, and probably even South Carolina because they did it last year. So that's 4-6, and then you get Vanderbilt, Florida State to close out the season. I think that's 6-6.
That would be. I could definitely see it. That would be such a bad look for Florida.
I mean, even if they get South Carolina, that's only 7. That's still under.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't hate that.
They did themselves no favors out of conference with Utah.
Definitely don't hate that. Cincinnati under is right at 9 on this website right now. I could see that as being a possible under as well. Just because of how much talent they graduated. Like they're basically completely rebuild the roster. But that is kind of without looking at their schedule, like off the top. That's just off the top of my head. I haven't dove in yet, so let's see.
I'm looking at it now. If we're looking at, if you want to get to the under, you get a road loss week 1 to Arkansas. You lose on the road to SMU in October. Maybe UCF bounces back, but I don't really believe in that. But that only gets you to a push. They have a pretty easy schedule, and maybe they lose to Navy. Maybe they get caught by an option team.
Yeah. No, you're right. Okay, so
A push isn't out of the question.
But I don't think I'm going to take the over, but you talked me out of taking the under.
They get a really light schedule this year. Here's one that I think, I mean, they said it here, but Georgia 10.5. I don't think they lose a game this year. They don't play A&M. They don't play Alabama.
They don't play Bama.
They don't play Bama. Auburn's going to suck this year. Never mind. Their toughest games on the schedule are South Carolina, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Which I don't think they're going to lose all 3 of those. So that's 10-2 at probably worst. And I think honestly, if they're going to lose one of them, they're going to lose 1. I like the over there.
Yeah. I guess probably another, just because the line's so high, Alabama's under might be a good idea, just to hope that, I don't know, you get a Chad Kelly Ole Miss game or something, and they drop a game somehow because their line's at 11.5.
Yeah, it's a smart play, but I don't know if I'd make it.
Some freak stuff to go down.
You got some stones if you're betting against Alabama, though. I wouldn't do that. I don't know.
Somebody's got to do it.
Okay, I finally found an under that I like. Nebraska.
Yeah, that one. I was looking at that one as well. That seems a little high for the Huskers.
7.5 for those in the audience. I mean, geez, that's asking a lot of a team that went 3-9 last year. Yeah, 3-9. I mean, they don't get Ohio State, but you instead you still have Minnesota, Nebraska, Iowa, Purdue, and you get Michigan, and you still have to play Oklahoma. Like that's, I don't know, under 7.5. Hammer that. That's actually free money.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off that one.
Here's something I didn't expect. A&M 8.5.
Okay.
Actually, their offense is like so bad and stupid. I could see them going 8-4 again.
Texas ATM, as we're calling them now. Could see them piecing a couple together.
Yeah, they're going to lose to UMass at home. K-State 6.5, free money, bet the over. Talking me out of Kansas, over 2.5. Talking me out of Kansas.
That's what I'm saying, dude. They set a lot of these lines so low. When you look at their non-conference games, you figure they win. You know, they beat up on a couple small schools, and then beat somebody down the road, and then you're good.
Well, they have Houston out of the conference. Never mind. I don't feel good about that one anymore. I talked myself out of it.
When the line's at 2.5 and you need non-conference games for that total, you know it'll be a rough year.
Yeah. Because then that's the year that you fucking lose all three out of conference.
Yeah. But yeah, that's about all I had for ones that were jumping out to me.
Yeah,
I'm sure
nothing...
as we get closer to the season, we're going to go more in depth and do some week one, way too early week one picks at some point here. I don't know. Are we going to touch on that at all today?
Yeah, why not? So the thing with a lot of these week one games is that like these lines are huge, or some of these lines don't exist because they're playing either FCS or smaller schools. I think that if you can still find Illinois -9 against Wyoming, that's a good play. I don't particularly think that Wyoming's going to be any good this year. They pretty much lost everyone who can play to transfer portal.
I just came across, does Vandy really open at Hawaii on the island week one? August 27th?
I'm looking at that now.
And
yeah.
Hawaii is a dog on the island?
Dude, Hawaii stinks.
That doesn't matter. It's the island. And it's Vandy.
I mean, I'm looking at it now. You got a line as small as Vandy -1 and as big as -6.5. You're bringing SEC talent to a team that plays in a track and field stadium. I mean,
listen, you're right. If you can get, they might not win. Hawaii might not win, but 6.5 on the island is too much.
So it says that that's their line. Never mind. I don't know. I think I'd take Vandy by 6.5. That gives you wiggle room for a touchdown.
This is 100% stemming from the one time, I forget who they were playing, but it was like Hawaii after dark. Like it was a game that started at 10:30, and I put some cash on Hawaii plus like 350, and it came down to like the last second. They had a last second touchdown, scored one, and it was like I felt like a genius by having that big of a dog. So I've been big on Hawaii ever since, regardless of how shitty they actually are.
Was it last year?
No, I think it was 2 years ago. I, for the life of me, cannot remember who it was.
They upset Fresno State last year.
No, I don't think it was Fresno State. It was a school like that, though. But that's how my dumb brain works, where if they've done something good for me in the past, it just tickles the brain a little bit, and I put it back on them, even though that's like the worst way to gamble.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about it. Backyard brawl.
Yep.
You've got 6, 6.5, and 7. All of them favoring Pitt.
Yeah. And I would take all of them.
If I bet on Pitt football, absolutely.
Yeah. I might even move the line here and make it like a double-digit game, put it at 9.5.
I think I'd be comfortable with it. So I did have to go nuclear today on this guy Joel, who always appears on my Twitter, is at WV Stats guy, and he's a nice guy. He didn't really want to argue with me. He actually, wanted to talk stats with me, but I was using for my argument SP Plus, which have you ever heard of that?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so basically it's a predictive measure, and what it does is it tries to predict how good you'd be against the true average college football team, and it gives you a rating relative to 0. Pitt is plus 14.8, and the latest rankings in West Virginia is minus 0.7. So the SP Plus spread would actually be 15.5. If you account for the fact that it's at home, it's an 18.5 point spread. But I wouldn't be comfortable taking it up there. I think, especially like week 1, you're still figuring stuff out. That's a rivalry game.
Yeah.
I do like that we're favored, though.
Still a lot to feel good about in the game, but that big of a line would be...
That would actually scare me.
Yeah.
I waffle between like, oh yeah, that's a fine line, and just like being like, oh, that's an insulting line. But I'm not going to bet on this game anyway. It's just going to lead to bad thing.
Correct.
Here's a good one. Penn State at Purdue kicks off an hour after the backyard brawl. 3.5 point favorites on the road. I'm feeling frisky about this one. I think Purdue's got some dog in them here.
Would love that. Would absolutely love that. They do have one good upset in them every year. If they want to just get it out of the way, week 1, let's do it. That would be okay.
A Purdue upset's like when they're
right.
like double-digit dogs.
That's not the typical Purdue upset. So I guess if they wanted to be just a real Big Ten team, they should just win this game. How about that, Purdue?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know. Penn State's probably going to go like 7-5. Who cares?
Yeah,
they're going to go 7-5 for the third year in a row, and everyone's going to laugh at them.
And they're going to extend James Franklin even more.
After seeing James Franklin in line for a flight to Los Angeles, they extended him for 100 years. And then they're legally required to take his children as coach. Yeah.
I'm just scrolling here trying to find another one that I like.
I think I like Illinois plus 5.5 against Indiana. I think Indiana's going to suck again.
You think people are still too high on them? They still got a little bit of that bump from that, 2020 season?
I think they were good in 2019 too.
Yeah.
But like, he's like their head coach, Tom Allen, has just made some really, really poor hires. Like, 2019 they were 8-5, then they went 6-2 in 2020. Then they completely created and went 2-10, and they hired Walt Bell as their offensive coordinator from UMass. That sucks. Illinois is just going to beat you up. Just going to run the ball down your throat. I think that's an upset waiting to happen by Vegas standards. I wouldn't consider that an upset by my own power rankings, right?
Yeah. All right. Another good one is Oregon, Georgia, week 1, because this has a pretty wide range of lines. You get anywhere from Georgia favored by 14.5 to Georgia favored by 18 over Oregon.
What was the low end of that?
14.5.
If it's already over 2 scores, you may as well just take the 18, right?
Yeah, because you're either going to get, if it's a game like last year, you're obviously going to be, where there weren't 3 scores in the entire game. There was, but you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or you're going to get like the Georgia just running away with it, and then it's going to be 18 covered anyway. But
it's too... I don't hate the spread, right? I think that UGA is going to have their way with them, but I don't know. I'm not super confident about that.
I think it comes down to their offense. That their defense is going to hold Oregon. It's just how many points are they going to put up? Are they going to be able to push the ball down the field enough to really open it up and score?
I guess, they are facing, Oregon's defense was really strong, but then again, they got exposed twice against Utah for not being able to stop the run. So
that's true.
I don't see why
pretty good
Georgia
at running
wouldn't do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
But then again, that leads to a more low-scoring game. I don't know. I don't love those lines. I think 14.5 is like, I bet 13.5. I don't think I bet 14.5.
Well, keep an eye on that line.
I'll be looking.
It'll move.
I think you're going to be on the opposite side of this one. Cincinnati is anywhere from a 6.5 to a 7-point dog at Arkansas. I would take Cincinnati to cover that touchdown, right? I mean, that's me. I would take that.
Yeah, I think my biggest thing is that it's in Arkansas. If it was in Cincy, it might be different. But yeah, that's almost too big of a line. I think I'd probably take Arkansas still, just because I think they're probably pretty even teams. It's just going to come down to atmosphere. Is kind of my thought process there. So that's probably why I'd still go with Arkansas, but don't love that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk atmosphere, Appalachian State gets North Carolina at home week 1, 3-point dog. I think I would take App State money line there.
It's in Boone?
In Boone, yeah.
Yeah. Dude, App State just has that. They just do it sometimes. That's not even that big of an upset either, but
No.
I don't know. Is that
I don't
be for Pitt's schedule to have a UN? I guess it wouldn't matter that much if UNC wins a couple more games, but just trying to ACC as much as possible.
I mean, I don't know. We're here to make money and not root for North Carolina.
You're right. Fuck them. Take App State money line. Lock it in.
I think that's gonna be my lock until it gets out of a. Yeah, fuck it. Lock it up. Who cares? The odds will only get better.
Here's one I think you'll like a lot: is Utah and Florida.
All right.
Just talking about Florida earlier, it seemed like you pretty much penciled that in as an easy loss. Biggest line is Utah by -2.5.
What's the smallest one?
Smallest is Utah as a dog by a point.
You can still get them +1. Where?
MGM.
No way. I might walk down the horseshoe.
That's
I think if you're still getting Utah as a dog, that might be free money.
That's one that I like a lot too. I'm with you on that one. I'm big on Utah. So
yeah, I mean, also it's literally week 1, new coach. Florida inherited a pretty soft team. That's a recipe for disaster. I still like them as far as 2.5. I'll go. I don't have any power rankings or advanced stat numbers that actual bettors use, but I was gonna say Montana State, James Madison's a rematch of the SCS playoffs last year, but that's a lie. I don't know. Bet Montana State. I like their vibe. That's a vibe check bet.
Vibe check bet of the week.
That's my vibe check lock of the week.
Yeah, dude. Hey, that's our first segment. Vibe check lock of the week.
I'm looking at the rest of these lines. I think that if you want to find value, I think you've got Louisville -3 on the road. I think is a little low. I think they should probably be favored by more. Boise State +4, +3.5 against Oregon State on the road. Oregon State, I'm high on them, but if Boise is actually back, if they're rolling, that could be an upset as far as the spread. And then I see LSU favored as little as 2.5 against Florida State. Actually, is that a Rivers Casino? The one in fucking Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
No way. All right, well.
For listeners there can go, if you don't want to fucking do it on FanDuel, go to Rivers.
Yeah, FanDuel won't give you as good odds, but 2.5, I mean, that's a de facto home game.
Yeah.
Superdome. Oh, actually, there's another. Oh, MGM has it as well. So I think that's where you're going to find a lot of value. If that line doesn't move too far in the favor of LSU, like taking them by a field goal in the Superdome, which is just going to be, yellow and purple.
Yeah. No, I like that a lot. I think LSU kind of beats up on them a little bit.
And then I think every other line here is either too big or not a line.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I don't know if there's any that we didn't talk about it that any listeners want us to go more in depth on, or if we did talk about it and you want to talk about it more, put it in the podcast review or DM us and we'll talk more about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So speaking of that, we're gonna have a tweet go out probably on Sunday, and we're gonna ask you for questions. We want to do a Q&A show. Moving forward, I think we're gonna move into the Big Ten preview next, followed by the SEC, the top of the Group of 5. Then we'll go into the ACC, and then we'll do an episode dedicated to the Pitt schedule. So that's kind of the what to look forward from us, pending any huge news. Other than that, you want to get out of here?
Yeah, let's do it.
As always, I've been your host, Zach Kaminsky. I've been joined by my buddy Mason. You can follow the show on Twitter at SimplifiedPod. You can find our Twitters in the bio of the show. Make sure you give us a follow. Like I said before, we're going to have a Q&A post go up, but if you have any questions you want us to answer, feel free to DM the show or DM one of us. Beyond that, like Mason said, leave a 5-star review, leave an Apple review. It really helps the pod out. And with that, we'll see you next time.
Go to Pitt.